Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Iowa Ideas. This is our 9th year of the Iowa Ideas event hosted by the Gazette. And this conference that happens annually explores topics that are unique and important to Iowans. So this is the second day of our 2-day conference that we're discussing pressing issues that Iowans across the state are facing. So thank you for joining us. Before we dive into today's session, I'd like to say a quick thank you to ICT Midwest, who has sponsored this session. With their help and their sponsorship, they help keep Iowa Ideas sessions and registration free for all. So thank you to ICT Midwest. A quick note from me before we dive into some questions and introduce our panelists. For our virtual attendees in this session, you are able to ask questions of our panelists today through your virtual Q&A Zoom box. So feel free to send in those questions as they come up throughout the session, and we will incorporate them into the conversation. So without further ado, let's just dive into the session. I'm Olivia Cohen. I'm the Environment and Energy Reporter for the Gazette. I'll be moderating today's session on the state of K-12 agriculture education in Iowa. And let's get into meeting our panelists. Kelly, let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit about you, your background, and what's led you to this panel today?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to a great conversation highlighting agriculture literacy in our K-12 classrooms across Iowa. I'm Kelly Foss. I serve as the Executive Director of the Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was the Executive Director of the Downtown Farmers Market in Des Moines, Iowa, working with over 300 growers, farmers, entrepreneurs to sell directly to consumers in our downtown Des Moines area. So now I'm with Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation. And for those who are not familiar with Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation, we're a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3. And we're supported by very passionate ag industry leaders, commodity experts, education experts, and just many agriculture advocates across Iowa. So IELF was really born out of I would say, a similar conversation like we're going to have here today. And at that time, 11 years ago, those who were sitting around the table that are very passionate about ag, were really getting discouraged with the reality that people don't know where their food comes from. And they wanted to get students excited about agriculture and really help them see how agriculture touches nearly every aspect of their daily lives. So since then, IELF has been connecting with Iowa educators and students really to help elevate that message of agriculture in classrooms across Iowa. And just to kind of give you a little snippet of kind of our reach through our ag literacy focused programs and resources, each year we connect with over 180,000 students and about 4,000 teachers. Our programs are really kind of across the board, but we do a lot to amplify the knowledge, awareness, understanding of today's agriculture, but to kind of help summarize, I think a lot of people maybe aren't familiar with what we do. So just to kind of help summarize our core focus, our team creates ag-focused classroom resources and materials that are aligned with Iowa core standards, and that's a really important piece of the work that we do. Is everything that we create is very focused on Iowa core standards to help teachers implement it into their classroom. And then secondly, we provide professional development workshops to help train elementary, middle school, high school teachers, typically those non-vocational teachers that are not teaching ag. And so we help these educators learn about ag and integrate ag-focused connections into their curriculum. And just you might be saying, okay, that's great. Why do they do that? And we know that K-12 teachers are really pros at being teachers, but they just have so much going on and just the depth of what they have to teach. Many educators really don't have an ag background. Maybe they didn't grow up on a farm. They don't have formal training in agriculture like our ag teachers do. And with programs like Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation, we can kind of help bridge that gap to I'll say, help teachers learn about food and agriculture, and um, at the same time help them gain confidence to teach agricultural concepts in their core subject. So we've been around for about 10 years, and I would say we've, I think we've, made a mark, but I believe we have a long ways to go. But with IELTS resources and similar, resources, I think that we have helped really, at this point, thousands of teachers just really get excited to use agriculture as a lens to teach science and all their core curriculum, their social studies, and even their STEM and CTE courses, math, language. So we're working with educators that aren't focused on teaching ag, like I think we'll hear a little bit later about the ag teachers. These teachers are really starting from scratch when we start to introduce teaching agriculture in their classroom. So um, as you might guess, I'm pretty excited about the work that we do and just excited to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Alan?
Thanks for having, excuse me, thanks for having me today. My name's Alan Spencer. Wow, sorry. I work at the Iowa Department of Education. My title is Education Program Consultant for Ag, Food, and Natural Resources. And so my career started in 1997. I was a high school agriculture teacher in Iowa here, and then I spent some time at the Department of Education doing actually what Scott does now. And then I went back to the classroom and returned back to the Department of Education here a year ago in June. And what I do is I work with all of the ag teachers in Iowa. I also work with all of our career and technical education consultants that we have at the Department of Education, because we have every school in Iowa has to have 4 of the 6 career and technical education areas that they teach in the public high schools. And that's ag, applied sciences, sometimes still called industrial tech, business, information systems, health, and family consumer science. And so I work with the ag teachers and oversee and work with a lot of the things we do with the FFA, which I know we'll talk about. But I've been involved with ag classes and FFA my entire life.
Thank you, Alan. And Scott?
Good afternoon. Scott Johnson, Iowa FFA Association Executive Director, and I succeeded Alan when he vacated the position. That's going on almost 14 years ago now, Alan. How fast time moves. Wrapping up year 13, getting into year 14 here in a few months. Like Alan, I did go into ag education at Iowa State and started my teaching career in 2002 in West Central Iowa. Taught for about 10 years before moving to this position. Prior to that, actually interned for State FFA Association, former student, all the things, Northeast Iowa native, and have been working with an organization now in Iowa here. We serve 270. At the beginning of the school year is kind of hard to track because schools have been adding programs, which is a good thing. We've been growing. Finished last year with 272 FFA chapters across all the school systems, not all the school systems, but school systems in the state, and 20,600 members that are involved in the organization. And that turns out to serving right around 315, 320 agriculture education instructors that are leading those programs.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. Just to get started here with a few questions, Alan, I believe you touched on this some, but could you just walk us through, what does the current state of agricultural education look like in kindergarten through 12th grade classrooms in Iowa?
Well, we work mainly with high schools and junior high through the Department of Education, and so we have a lot of programs in Iowa. And so when we get up to that 270 range, we have high schools that will start programs, and what they have to do is they have to have a certified agricultural education instructor that's certified by the state of Iowa. And we then each of those classes or each of those programs has to offer 3 sequential courses within that area. And so they select different topics based regionally on what they need locally in their community. And oftentimes it's typical to have an overview of agriculture, usually plant science, animal science, in ag mechanics, ag business, things like that they teach. And so within Iowa, just so you are aware, when Scott started back in about 2012, since then we have started about 62, 63 new agriculture programs with FFA chapters throughout the state. And so that's been a huge increase in especially some parts of our state. One thing that we also do is we're not just with public schools. We have a lot of private parochial schools that have programs as well. And we've started into some of the charter schools that have started in Iowa and started to pop up more recently. Typically, most agriculture programs have a junior high aspect to it. And so down into 7th and 8th grade, sometimes 6th grade, they offer exploratory agriculture classes that are there. And then when Scott talks about the FFA membership can, for us, go down into 7th grade. And that is usually a big driver in a lot of communities. We have a definite need for agriculture teachers with that extensive growth that we've had in the past 13 years. We need more ag teachers, and we've been able to fill most. There's about 4 or 5 schools that don't have agriculture teachers this year, but we do have about 30 programs that have folks who have received their initial CTE, Career and Technical Education authorization from the Department of Ed. And that means that they can, for up to 3 years, teach agriculture classes based on what they have a background in. And they have to have a degree in agriculture of some type. And then at the end of those 3 years, if they have built up and worked on it, they can take some classes to be able to get a full authorization to be able to teach as a permanent teaching license. And so it's been tough to fill those spots in some places. Now, as far as the classes and the offerings for from kindergarten on, that's more Kelly's domain, working with teachers there. We do have some agriculture teachers that do work with students at lower levels, but it's on a much more specific basis. It might be lessons or have students that go down and assist with programs that they do at the elementary levels.
Thanks, Alan. Scott or Kelly, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I can. Alan kind of alluded to it a little bit. So we do work with K-12 educators, and our work is kind of two-part. As the sort of state lead for IELF and the Iowa Ag in the Classroom Network. So first of all, we train teachers to use agricultural concepts kind of throughout their core curriculum. So with our with IELF, Iowa teachers K through 12 have access to hundreds of ag-centric lessons and resources. Really, most of them are available digitally, but also printed materials. And when we do our trainings, we do have a really good split of elementary, middle school, and high school teachers that are engaging in our workshops and learning about agriculture to be able to implement it in their classroom. So we definitely know that it's happening. Definitely more consistency would be, where we want to head towards, but that's just, we know that we're, reaching a snippet of students and teachers that are engaging with ag focused kind of lessons in the classroom. using our resources. And secondly, we also support the statewide Ag in the Classroom network, and Ag in the Classroom is really a sort of a national program, and so each state that participates has a network in their state, and so we guide and support the statewide network of Ag in the Classroom educators and volunteers, and so they visit classrooms across Iowa as kind of guest speakers to teach ag-focused concepts and lessons in the classroom. So that network is, I would say, pretty small compared to the number of school districts that we have, but we have about 75-ish trained Ag in the Classroom educators, and each educator covers a very specific county, and each county Ag in the Classroom program is managed slightly different. But for purposes of this conversation, kind of generally speaking, Ag in the Classroom educators are there to collaborate with teachers in their classroom. So they schedule guest appearances, I guess you could call it, or guest visits to teach agriculture in the classroom. And so that's all grades, K through 12. I will say that program, the Ag in the Classroom program, probably focuses on K through 5 for the most part, but they do go into middle school and high schools as well to teach higher level ag lessons with the teachers a lot of times. But just in general, the Ag in the Classroom network, really, they do cover a lot of ground. They hit almost all 99 counties, but with only a minimal amount of educators, they can't reach all. What is it now? Something like 500,000 K through 12 students in the state. But so that's why IELF really, our role is to work to inspire classroom teachers through all grade levels to get them excited to teach agriculture and use agriculture as a lens to teach their students. But so I think that kind of rounds out kind of what we're seeing through the K through 12 level through very kind of through Alan's work as well as IELF's work.
Thanks, Kelly. And Scott?
Yeah, Alan kind of alluded to it a little bit, and that is that FFA is the activity that's directly associated with agriculture education taught in grades 7 through 12. And while we've experienced a lot of growth, rarely do we necessarily get approached by patrons of communities or school systems that say, hey, we're really looking for an agriculture program. More often than not, we're getting the inquiries of, hey, how do we get FFA in our schools? Or I want my kids to be in FFA, or whatever that is. And FFA comes out of the existence of agriculture education in school systems. So in Iowa Code, FFA is a career and technical student organization, which bunches of acronyms, and we won't get into all of those, but basically FFA, along with other student organizations that are tied to career and technical education, they are co-curricular activities. So there is a intricate nature of what is taught in the classroom being connected with what the students are doing within the activity. So it's not a club. It doesn't live outside of a core classroom or something like that, like an extracurricular activity might. It's co-curricular, like I think speech, band, choir, your music department things. It's kind of how that works. So you don't really have one without the other. And we're fortunate to have so many people that have an interest in wanting to see their youth and students involved in FFA and what we have to offer and what they can learn from that. At the same time, because that's the forward-facing piece of what's happening in ag education, that is the public piece that people see and are attracted to and want to advocate for and support. So in a way, that's helped us be able to grow the number of schools that are offering agricultural education in schools.
Thank you, Scott. Continuing with that, for Iowa schools that want to incorporate FFA into their school districts or into their schools, how do they go about making that step?
So the first thing a school has to do is hire an ag teacher. They have to make that local commitment to be able to hire an agricultural education instructor, and then they work through me And so what we do, wow, I'm sorry. And so what we do is if they hire an ag teacher, we work with the Department of Ed. They set up their curriculum that they're going to use. And then to start the FFA chapter option, then they have to submit a certain type of paperwork to us at the Department of Ed. And I review that and make sure that it's accurate and that it's done correctly. And they have to submit a roster. They have to submit what we call a program of activities, or a POA. That is essentially like a calendar of events, a list of officers, a budget, constitution, and bylaws that they have to create for their organization. And then they have a separate form that they have to send, and they give those to me. And once I get those, I approve it, send it through National FFA, and tell Scott, and they have an FFA chapter. So, but every year, to maintain your FFA chapter, you have to do certain things to be able to keep that going, submit their membership, their program of activities, pay the dues, and so forth like that. So, but during the year, what I do at the Department of Ed is we go through and review every career and technical education department in the state. And then I specifically go in and review all of the agricultural education departments and ensure the classes that they have, review the number of students that they have, and make sure that they're doing what they need to. And then also each year or every 5 years, there's a self-study that every ag ed program has to do to be able to make sure they look at their strengths and weaknesses to be able to improve and get better in the next 5 years. And they all of our CTE areas have to do those things too. But I approve all of the agricultural education ones. Fortunately, they're set up on a staggered system, so I get a few every year. But every school has to have have to have 4 of the 6 CTE areas available, and some have additional ones. And so we work with schools. If they're interested in starting a program, we have a tour that we do at our state FFA convention for administrators that might be interested in starting an ag ed program in an FFA chapter, and we bring them in and show them what's possible. We also will go out and meet with them if we need to. Scott's done that. I've done that to be able to work with folks to be able to start an agricultural education program. And then we do work with the private and parochial schools to be able to assist them with a similar type of process. They don't have to follow exactly the same rules because they're slightly different than a public school, and they don't get some of the public funding that our public high schools do, but they still need to follow the same guidelines. And oftentimes, like Scott said, the FFA is the thing that people see. They don't see the thing necessarily that is in the classroom every day, but the public face with the blue jacket and that emblem. Our 100th anniversary is coming up in 2028, starting in 2028, and it's very public. People know. If you go to the Iowa State Fair and you go to the upper level of the ag building where the butter cow is, and you see our FFA display that Scott and the state officers have put together, it's got the FFA jackets up there, and it's hard to miss. So we work with anybody to try to help them get an ag program started. We have some programs that we're still working with right now to help them find teachers, and that's our goal, is to help them find teachers for hopefully either this spring or next year, and keep them going.
Thanks, Alan. Scott or Kelly, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, Alan mentions, state fair, and that's one of our, exposure opportunities, right, to the general public. And that tends to be, among other things, as a public facing kind of image of ag education, is As local FFA chapters publicize what they do, or they're involved in the community, or they're involved in fairs, that's where the public sees students doing certain things. If that's exhibiting at county state fair, if that's participating in contests or so on. So the public in general, as a general inquiry that we get is, well, I want my kid to do FFA, right? I want my kid to be able to do the speaking contest or show at county fair as an FFA member or so on. And in a way, that's kind of like asking for a tire, not realizing you have to buy the entire car in order to get the tire. So sometimes that can be overwhelming to those that come in as a general inquiry. So often what we're sharing then too, because that can be heavy. It's a lot to think about going through the process of being able to start a program. And we've been very fortunate over the last decade to have a number of local community patrons that have said, yes, we are. I have already had a communication with a number of patrons in the community, and we're working on putting together a community effort and then collaborating with the school to figure out how to make this a reality. And they understand that that could be a 2 or 3 year process, among other things. They understand that there could be a private-public partnership opportunity there for funds, as startup funds, to help get things going, and definitely approach it with the understanding of there isn't just one snippet that you get that benefits a specific student or a specific core group of students. It's about holistic, programming support for those students that have an interest there, and understanding that balance of the value that we can provide through technical skill development that occurs in classrooms, and then extending that beyond the classroom and collaborative opportunities to work with students outside the classroom and coordinating FFA events and exhibiting some leadership skills, and that combination of skill development and leadership skills together that really helps provide and prepare students for the future workforce.
And Kelly?
I'm pretty sure they covered it. I think they got it covered.
Sounds good. Another question I have for you all, and anyone can take this one. I'm curious, with some of the agriculture education curriculums that are currently in place throughout Iowa, what are some things that these curriculums do well? And what are some areas that these curriculums could use some improvement or some gaps in the ag education?
Well, I'll start.
Go ahead.
I mean, just kind of highlighting sort of, I think we're all doing really great things to kind of highlight where I think we see a potential gap in consistency through K through 6 and K through 12 in schools that don't have the ag teacher or don't have the FFA. So I just think there's, so much opportunity and, sort of connecting teachers through standard aligned focus resources through the K through 12, through teachers and students. I think each year we connect with as many, just IELF, our small nonprofit organization, our intention is to reach as many classrooms and teachers as possible. But, and I think there's a consistency of using agriculture as a lens. And if we can, continue to inspire one teacher at a time, I think, we'll continue to do that. But just kind of thinking about what kind of impact initiatives like what we're doing through the K through 12 classrooms and with teachers, what type of impact those types of initiatives and programs and resources could make if we can use it through an entire school or through an entire grade band where students will be introduced to agricultural concepts at an early age and consistently at each grade level, and kind of have more of an opportunity to take a deeper dive. I think we're doing well now and getting teachers excited and kind of inspired to teach agricultural concepts. But I will say that consistency from year to year for the students seems like a bit of a gap that maybe we can work on filling.
Some of the things we need to think about, we always need to be getting better. We can't be complacent. We can't look at what we have, because the complexion of our full scope of agriculture teachers has changed a lot in the last 20 years. Our average, if you get to 8 years of teaching experience, you've hit the average for what we have in the state of Iowa. We have a lot of teachers that have retired and left the profession, and we have a lot of brand new teachers. So one thing that we have, especially from, if you think about gaps, are what can we do to help prepare those teachers to be better. We have a large mentoring program that is held specifically through our Ag Teachers Association that we have. We just recently hired, the FFA did, a teacher support specialist who part of his role is to look at teacher recruitment and retention and making sure we keep those folks in the classroom. We last year, or 2 years ago, we started what we called the Ag Ed summit that we do in January. And so it's a little different. We have an Ag Teachers Conference in the summer. They have a slightly different bend to it, but the one in the winter in January, we focus more on things that are going to help them from a very specific professional development standpoint. And so last year's was all based on SAE, which is Supervised Agricultural Experience, which we've had forever, in different names at times, but essentially it's projects, jobs, employment, entrepreneurship activities, agri-science research that students will do aside from what they do in the classroom. And it meshes well with the new work-based learning initiatives that we have within the state of Iowa. And so we've done a lot of training to be able to help the teachers to get better at that, because schools can improve their review scores through the state by providing more work-based learning opportunities and helping those students so they can see success when they graduate from high school. And then specifically this year, we at the summit, we're focusing one of the days on how can you teach certain topic areas but integrated into the classroom, and taking some of our career development events that we do in the FFA and taking that knowledge and putting it into the classroom to help all the students. So one of them, for instance, is we're looking at our meats event. And so one thing that's important, people need to know where their meat comes from. And so when they go to the meat counter at Fairway or Hy-Vee, wherever they happen to be going, understanding how that meat was produced, how it's processed, and what they're looking at and what they're spending their money on, how can we help the teachers to be able to better train the students for that type of setting? And so there's always new technology, and there are lots of initiatives with those that are being done. But we try to pick a different topic every year and focus on that to be able to help. So, but our biggest gap, I think, is training new teachers and helping them to be able to get better at the profession and do a better job with educating students.
There's just a lot in agriculture. It's just a lot. And for so many from the outside looking in, it might appear that it's farming, production, agriculture, right? But it's about production of and processing and trends in marketing and the entire supply chain of providing food, fiber, energy. I think Secretary Nag has referenced that frequently, and the context of agriculture is a global industry, right? Global market, global society, and yet in our school systems there is an element of local control where local patrons have input and an influence on what is being introduced to their students based on their area or the students involved and the size of school. So there's going to be a variance in what is taught based on the student clientele that comes in. And oh, by the way, we're an elective area. We're not a required class. So how do we provide what is really needed to prepare for the workforce for these students where their career opportunities are, but also have something that attracts, say, a 15-year-old that's going to choose to take our class as opposed to something else, because of course it's impossible to take every class in school. So, and do I dare say technology is changing? I know that that's cliched, right? It just, there are things that as as the student version of me in high school would have never dreamed that we are covering now. And I think within the curriculum of these programs over the last generation or so, there's definitely been a shift from courses and programs that are production based to more literacy, technology, supply chain, and processing based, and really trying to provide a greater context for students to um, understand, where their food comes from, how it gets there, to understand that there's more than just the food that's being provided. So you think like production of corn, for example, it's a human food, it's a livestock food, it's an energy source. So which one do you use for what and why? And fortunately, we do have agriculture, food, and natural resources standards. So there are national standards that help articulate what our curriculum could and should look like, and those standards are crosswalked with national math and science standards, because there is a lot of math and science in agriculture. So the context of how we teach it is more in terms of like an applied math and an applied science, is definitely different today than what it might have been a generation or two ago. We probably taught it that way. We just never thought about documenting what we're teaching that way. It's always been an applied math and science. We're not wired as teachers at that time to think about it that way, which is, we taught agriculture. Now it's more, we're teaching applied math and science through an agricultural context, and that's a pretty steep learning curve for anybody jumping into the profession, let alone the significant number of instructors that we have, as Alan mentioned, that are in the beginning stages of their careers. As he mentioned, when they get into their 8th year teaching, they now have more experience than half the teachers in the state. That's significant. So he mentioned the hiring of that teacher support specialist and so on, and those professional development opportunities to help in retaining teachers, because that's really, yes, we have to recruit teachers to be into the classroom, but we also have to figure out how to better support them so that they stay.
Yes, thank you all for that. I appreciate it. That leads well into my next question for you all, specifically about ag teachers in Iowa. You mentioned training, recruitment, and getting them to stay in the classroom. But how big are those strains of recruiting these teachers and having them stay in Iowa classrooms? How big of an issue is that?
Significant, and I wish I had the statistics to pull up and share, because we're still education. So I think that the first thing I would preempt with is, for anybody that does any research on what's happening in education and teachers, school leaders will tell you it's not just agriculture, it's any subject matter. Getting teachers into the classroom, getting qualified teachers into the classroom, and then being able to provide a work environment and an experience within the profession that compels them to stay is significant. So it's a broader issue across all of education, and we're not immune from that. Secondly, for about the last 20 years or so, about 70%, maybe 75, 80% in some years of our new professionals or young professionals entering are female. And we were a male dominated profession for years and years and years. Actually, our joke within the profession was, in the 1980s, we had 5 female ag teachers and 2 of them were named Barb. And that's an inside joke, and I won't get into those details, but like you knew specifically who they were. So in the 80s, we had 5 female ag teachers, and sometime around 2017, so within the last 10 years, we flipped to where the majority of the ag teachers in the state of Iowa were female. And now we're somewhere in the 2-to-1 ratio or something like that. I mean, we approached 50-50 and just blasted right on by it. And I bring that up because uh, uh, females, young professionals in the classroom, marriage, maternity leave, family things. And I don't say that to be sexist. I'm just saying culturally that just wasn't a thing, in the 70s and 80s with the male dominated profession. So in general, there's going to be times where we will have young professionals that will leave the classroom. They are starting a family, and we start to see those professionals come back. So that's a good thing. We're glad that they had a passion for the profession, and when their family life allows them to return back to be leaders in our profession upon raising their family, we're glad to have them back and have their expertise. But um, we definitely have our work cut out for us, but it's so interesting to do what we can to provide the support within the subject area and do the support within the onboarding of what it means to work with students in FFA activities. But in general, some of the things we can't control are how are teachers in general supported within their respective classrooms, let alone of the subject matter that they're teaching, and then add on top of that how well connected so many of our ag teachers and FFA programs are with their communities. We've talked about this, right? It's so much more than just what happens in the four walls of the classroom. So it's a different construct than what it might be in teaching other subject areas as well. So the challenges associated with getting established in a community, building relationships with those community supporters and stakeholders, and being present outside the school system, along with what is being asked of our professionals just within the school system. So it's a lot, and there are school systems out there that understand that, communities that understand that and support that, and we are so grateful for those programs. But for those that aren't as connected with it, it's a tough thing to be able to advocate for and sustain.
And we're not the only state. This is a nationwide thing. This happens everywhere. Just that encouragement level that we need to have those students want to go into agricultural education, and then keeping them there, and then having them go out and find a school. And oftentimes it ends up that they want to be closer to home, and so they may go to a school to start for a year or two, and then go find a place that might be closer to home and work out better for them from a family standpoint. And it makes it tough. Especially, I think we're better off in Iowa from a standpoint of distance and space, whereas some of our friends, say in South Dakota and North Dakota, there's a long ways between things up there, and so it can make it kind of tough. One thing that has changed also in the last 30 years is the ag programs that have multiple teachers. And so it used to be you typically had one ag teacher in your community and that was it. But we have several schools that have 2, 3, 4, 5 that's totally different now. And they're not all like big schools. There's one that's a relatively normal sized Iowa school that has 4. And it's just a rare thing to have that. And so, but the opportunities for what they can provide for their students is kind of awesome. But they have that help, locally with another ag teacher in the area to be able to help them to be able to do it. So we've been working with our teacher ed institutions to be able to come up with some ideas to try to help them to be able to recruit better and to get students to their facilities. We have 4 institutions, really: Iowa State, Morningside, Dordt, and Buena Vista, that have agricultural education majors that will take students and be able to help them to become ag teachers. So we've been working with them and what they can do to get kids onto campus and see what they offer and find a place for them. And it's a challenge everywhere.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that, Kelly?
Oh, I think they really did a good job covering it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Kind of pivoting here a little bit. I'm curious, what are some of the skills and the knowledge in these agriculture programs that Iowa schools are emphasizing? Are they primarily focused on food production, or are they also do they cover areas like sustainability, technology, and agribusiness?
Agribusiness would be one area that's probably explicitly addressed as a course. Farm business management, ag business management, it takes on various names. When I taught, that was a staple course in our ag education department, as is the case amongst a lot of ag ed programs. I would suspect, and Alan might have the actual specific data, although it's probably not right at your fingertips. Ag business, animal science, and probably something in agricultural mechanics tend to be anecdotally we see a lot of, and then building out from plants from there. And part of the reason for that is, of course, if I'm an ag teacher and I'm an elective and I have to recruit students that come into my program, plants tend to not have a lot of personality, and animals do. So that's how I get freshmen into my ag program, because I offer an animal science class. Because if I offered a freshman plant science class, I wouldn't see as many students, and then I have to introduce those plant science opportunities beyond that. But connecting students with the opportunities that are out there is really important. And in the areas of technology and sustainability, really we're talking about things that should be embedded into the curriculum. So it's not about a specific class about technology. It's about how, as you develop into understanding, how beef is produced or dairy is produced or whatever in livestock, how is technology used for record keeping, for sensors, for tracking devices on animals, or so on. And then in plant science, in the plant science courses in production, unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, for scouting and treatment of crops and so on, and sustainability and balancing conservation practices that help conserve and keep nutrients at the site where we're trying to do production, and water quality testing, and preserving our topsoil and organic matter, and so on. So all of it, the technology and sustainability is really integrated into the class, into the coursework, because that's the construct through which those things can be taught. And it makes it a very practical and real life application, which can help connect students to the concepts better than something that's a conceptual practice that's taught in a classroom without an application to something of a real life situation or a lab opportunity.
So with Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation, we're focusing again on the teachers who are teaching science and social studies, and kind of a focus on STEM and some CTE courses. But they're also teaching math and language arts, and they're not teaching agriculture specifically, or very focused like with an ag educator. So with our programs, we have over 300 lesson plans that educators have access to just digitally on our website, things like that. But we've created ag accurate publications and materials, and just a plethora of standard aligned resources. And our goal is to really make it easy for educators to kind of start incorporating agricultural concepts into their curriculum, starting at the very young ages. So it's K through 12, but we have curriculum that really helps them start very young. And just kind of as an example, because we have so many, but as an example, kind of using our science, technology, engineering, and math focused lesson plans, we have resources that can help teachers integrate learning about agriculture, and answer sort of questions like, how can science and technology help increase food production? So we're talking about food production. How are farmers helping produce safe and abundant food supply? So we're integrating all kinds of lessons to answer those questions. And what do sustainable systems for a growing population look like? We're integrating lessons to help teachers help students answer questions like that. So it's very tactical and engaging. But again, the consistency of educators, using these materials from year to year, K through 6 or 7 until they're hitting ACT classes in high school. That's what our goals are, is to make sure educators know about these sorts of programs and just elevate more interest in using agriculture as a lens to teach, again, the core standards that aren't ag focused.
Our teachers are very innovative. They have the ability to do so many different things. And yeah, you talk about sustainability, you talk about technology. We have ag teachers with greenhouses, fantastic greenhouse programs. They have livestock facilities at their schools where they raise livestock and show kids how to take care of livestock and manage them humanely and the way they should be and fed properly. There are programs that have ties with veterinary programs in town, because there's a lot of students who think they want to become a veterinarian or a vet assistant, and how can that medical aspect really help them and decide what they want to do in the future. Plus, if they need to understand what's critical when you're working with animals. We have ag teachers with aquaculture programs. We had an ag teacher that got off into other things like raising shrimp or the really small alligators. We've had ag teachers with meat facilities in school, and they have a plan to be able to show kids how to process things. And there are schools that are specifically working on research projects. And so they're working with students on doing agri-science research in those places, especially in their greenhouses and their labs that they've created, and their food science labs that they have, to be able to let the students explore, solve issues, figure out options. We've got schools with honeybee populations. We've got schools with land. There's one school, especially in Rock Valley, that they do a whole manufacturing portion, and they have connections with a lot of the industrial machining companies in their town, and they create and sell, and they have a whole marketing aspect to it, and it's a fantastic option for those kids. So when you see those things, the biggest point is being able to give them something where they could come back and go, I would like to do that in the future, or they come up with new ideas and be able to go, this technology, I mean, we think about all of us. There's technology now that never existed when we were in school, right? And so if you give them a background in being able to create something new in the future with something they haven't even seen yet, that's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Just keeping an eye on the clock here, we have just under 10 minutes left of this session. So I think this will likely be our last question that we get to. But I'm curious, what are some of the differences that exist between rural and urban schools in terms of access to agriculture-related education?
It can be it depends a lot on what you have available and what you have. We do have programs starting in some more urban schools. The Des Moines program is going through a transition right now. And so they're going to be holding some informational sessions to try to select a direction that they want to go. But they have greenhouses, they had livestock facilities, they had an orchard, they had garden related things available. They have hydroponics and and a food science lab and a vet science lab, and so they're working through some things right there. But Waterloo just started a brand new agriculture program at their career and technical ed center that they have. So a lot of things that we do, it depends on where you live. I mean, you get to certain parts of Iowa, you're further away from different things, and the agriculture is different in other places, depending on what type of state you're in, whether it's more crop production based, whether it's more livestock, whether it's more of a mix. And so we do have more interest from urban type schools. We have program at Waukee and Dowling that are relatively new, but they're working through and working on programs that have interest to their students within their school district. And so that's the challenge, is working with those larger school districts. And we have talked to a couple other bigger school districts to help them try to figure out what they could do in an agriculture program setting. But we have some awful creative teachers in some of even our tiniest schools that we have in Iowa that do a fantastic job of bringing hands-on activities to their classroom and being able to expose their students to things even outside of what they see within the 10 miles radius of their school district. So it can be a challenge with funding. It can be a challenge with school size and the way that the community can fund it or the way they see it. But that's what we're doing, is trying to help all of them to be able to do a better job. But I don't foresee the trend changing. There's a definite difference in the way that we see agriculture today than it was when I was in high school. So when I was in high school in the late 80s, it was the end of the farm crisis, and it was a tough time. And I grew up in a small town, or I went to school in a small town in Southwest Iowa, and that we were told not to go into anything related to agriculture. And the FFA membership, just for instance, right now is over 20,600 kids. When I was in high school, it was about 9,000, and it was at its lowest point. So I'll let other people talk at that point in time, but we have changed the image of agriculture, and we have to constantly work at it through all of our things, K through 12.
Yeah, that got me to thinking about many teachers that I've worked with through our professional development programs. We could be in the most rural part of the state, and teachers are telling us, no, students don't know about agriculture. They might pass it every day as they, hop on the bus and get to their classrooms, get to their schools. They're, driving by agriculture all around them, but they just don't really have that connection anymore. And so that's why it is so important for teachers to, for organizations and Department of Education to help get teachers excited to learn more about agriculture, so they can really teach more and bring more awareness of agriculture to students in the classroom through lesson plans, through engaging activities. So yeah, I think the days are different now, as Alan was noting. Just people are just so, even in rural areas. I think for sure in urban areas maybe they're not so connected, but in talking to our educators that were getting excited about teaching agriculture, they're very excited when they can more easily implement into their classroom some learning about agriculture, just for the very smallest concepts in agriculture, so students know where their meat is coming from and understand the processing, and they understand the value of agriculture economically speaking in our state. And yeah, so it's pretty exciting to be able to connect with urban and rural communities through the work that we do at IELTS.
I'll quote Iowa Ag Intel information from the Coalition to Support Iowa Farmers website. 19% of residents in Iowa are employed by ag and ag-related industries. That's 1 in 5, and I think nationwide it's 1 in 6 ag and ag-related industries. In Iowa, we've been known as Agriculture Education FFA has been known as a rural school program for decades, and we're so grateful for these larger schools that have taken a leap. That understand that 1 in 5, one in 5. I mean, theoretically, 1 in 5 high school graduates should be looking at an ag or an ag-related career. We don't meet that goal if we don't have the largest schools in our state introducing and preparing high school students in agricultural curriculum, agricultural related areas. Rural population is shrinking. We need to have these population centers that have students involved in preparing those students for those opportunities. And those are significant logistical challenges. You take any school system that has multiple high schools. Yes, there's a career and technical education center where that curriculum resides. How do we get to a point where we have a presence just in the high school, in the hallways of these middle schools and high schools and these school districts that have multiple school centers? That's a big challenge. And we're so grateful for these large school systems that have said, listen, we have to be able to provide something to these students because this is where the opportunities are. And as Alan mentioned, it's probably not going away. And I would suggest 9.3 billion, is that the population projection now for 2050? They're all going to eat. They're all going to need clothes. They're all going to need energy. And we're going to have to help figure out how to get there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for that, and Kelly and Alan for joining us on this panel today. We appreciate it. And thank you to all of our attendees who tuned in to listen to this session. We appreciate that as well. And once again, thank you so much to ICT Midwest, our sponsor for this session. Without their sponsorship and their help, we wouldn't be able to keep these sessions and registration for Iowa Ideas free for all. So thank you to them. Once again, thank you to Kelly, Alan, and Scott for your insights this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.